people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap, our continued coverage of all this past weekend's action in the sport of boxing in Monte Carlo, the Matchroom Show. Reigning IBF lightweight champion of Brazil, Beatriz Ferreira, who successfully defended the blue belt against France's own Boudersa, who showed good gamesmanship and toughness, though not much else. She really put on display is her ability to take a beating.
Second best in every department. Second best at every turn.
I was surprised that Licia was able to go the distance with Beatriz, especially after the 9th round, where it didn't seem like there was much reason to send Licia back out there. For what?
This should have got waved off in the 9th. Licia's corner should have threw the towel right then and there.
She was able to hang tough. I heard Tony Bellew say during the broadcast that because Beatriz didn't get the knockout, maybe she's not a puncher, not at this weight.
I didn't agree with that.
Why not?
Because even if Beatriz didn't knock out Licia Boudersa yesterday in Monte Carlo, she did knock out Yanina Lescano in her last fight.
Why is that important?
Because Caroline Dubois fought that same Yanina Lescano, and Caroline Dubois wasn't able to knock her out. Beatriz Ferreira was.
I think that is ample evidence that not only is Beatriz Ferreira a strong puncher, a very strong puncher, you don't want to let her hit you clean. If Licia Boudersa was able to go the distance, maybe we can just chalk that up to her being tough.
It's not an indictment of Beatriz's power, it's a credit to Licia Boudersa's toughness. She's just a tough old bird.
After the fight, Eddie Hearn talked about getting Beatriz Ferreira the kind of opponents that will push her more than Licia Boudersa could. The unification matches. He mentioned Caroline Dubois. He mentioned Terry Harper.
That's the fight they can make.
Caroline Dubois is en route to face WBA regular champion Jessica Camara of Canada. She's otherwise preoccupied right now, and she's on another side of the street, but Terry Harper is right there, and Terry Harper is a champion at this weight. Terry Harper,
she's got the WBO title.
She's in Beatriz Ferreira's crosshairs. If they do manage to make that fight in the coming year, we'll come back to Tony Bellew's comments about Beatriz not being a puncher.
See about that.
If the goal is to make Beatriz as well known as Alicia Baumgartner, Michaela Mayer, Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, these fighters, she has to hit the ground running in the coming year and make at minimum 2 to 3 ring appearances. Activity is what's going to get her known because, I reiterate, she's a Brazilian fighter. And boxing is not to the Brazilians what it is to the Mexicans or the Puerto Ricans. Boxing isn't in Brazil what it is in America or the United Kingdom. It's not their pastime.
There's no built-in audience.
So the best bet to get her known is to get her active. That's how Gennady Golovkin rose to popularity many years ago, by being a busy fighter, an active fighter, and regularly brutalizing whoever they put in front of him.
It's what they gotta do for Beatriz. And a knockout win over Terry Harper, if they do make that fight, that'll help.
That will help, and she can't just disappear for 6 or 8 or 10 months after that. You have to keep her fighting. You have to keep her active.
That's it.
She's got a fan-friendly style, unlike the more well-known Sky Nicholson.
Beatriz is an action fighter.
Though what has helped the Sky Nicholson rise to some popularity is she has a frick to her frack. She has someone to attach her name to.
Amanda Serrano.
With Beatriz, her name has become attached to Caroline Dubois, but Caroline has some building to do. Caroline is not yet popular. So they're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way with Beatriz. They're going to have to build her popularity off of her performances and schedule of activity. The more girls she beats up, the more popular she might get.
That's it.
Congratulations to her. The prediction stuck. In the main event, we saw former unified champion MJ Akhmadaliev make short work of Ricardo Espinoza. Nice little demolition job that only lasted about 3 rounds. And after the fight was over, as you can imagine what the
conversation turned into.
Inoue. Where is Naoya Inoue? MJ Akhmadaliev wants his shot at Naoya Inoue.
Eddie Hearn claimed that Naoya Inoue is ducking MJ Akhmadaliev.
Inoue isn't normally one to get involved in a back and forth with another fighter, but he had something to say after Mudajan Akhmadaliev's latest verbal barbs. Akhmadaliev recorded his 13th in 14 starts last night in Monte Carlo with a third-round stoppage win against Ricardo Espinoza. The WBA Super Bantamweight title mandatory challenger and interim belt holder has long been calling for a shot at undisputed champion Naoya Inoue. The Uzbek southpaw had hoped to face Inoue in June, but instead watched the Japanese superstar refuse the WBA's order. This year, Inoue has fought and defeated Luis Neri in May and TJ Doheny in September, respectively. Akhmadaliev, 13-1, has been on the comeback trail since losing to Marlon Tapales in April of last year, a defeat which costed him a shot at Inoue. Last night, after his win against Espinoza, the former champion aimed some more digs at Inoue for not facing him. The only thing I want to say about Inoue is, why are you ducking me? If he doesn't want to fight me, then he just needs to explain. Because when I was a champion, I followed the rules. He should follow the rules as well. I had numerous mandatories and I was fighting them without any discussions. So I need an explanation because I am here and ready for the fight. The best should be fighting the best. I am a mandatory and interim champion. He should prove that he is the best in the division. He is a legend. He should prove it as well.
Inoue didn't take this lying down.
He responded by saying, "Why would I have to run away from someone who lost to Marlon Tapales? There's zero need for it. If you want to fight, keep the quote-unquote value of winning and wait." Now, I'm fully focused on the Sam Goodman fight, and he tagged MJ Akhmadaliev, to which MJ responded, "OSS champ, I never lost to anyone in a fair fight. You know it, and your team knows it. You were officially ordered to fight me twice. I challenge you having the right to do so. You avoid it twice. If you honor Bushido and you act like a samurai, then Senpuku is the only way for you now."
What's kakapupu?
That's basically when a samurai unalives himself for dishonoring his family name. That is the recommendation that MJ Akhmadaliev is making. But is that what's going on? Is Inoue ducking MJ?
Fat Dan thinks so.
Veteran boxing scribe Dan Rafael says, after Akhmadaliev Espinoza, Eddie Hearn manager Vadim Kornilov with a hard call out of Naoya Inoue, who really has to fight MJ. He's mandatory, former unified champion, and Inoue has twice avoided the mandatory. It's really the only fight that matters at 122. According to Dan, Inoue is avoiding this fight.
Fact.
According to another boxing scribe in Mark Ortega, counterpoint, mandatories can be stupid. MJ, as a two-belt champion, fought fringe guys on obscure cards and undercards, lost his belts, then beat two unheralded fighters in 2 years that hasn't really staked him any claim to being a must-fight. Inoue can vacate a belt and still be the quote-unquote guy.
Fact.
According to yet another boxing scribe in Stephen Kimothy, yes, it's true that MJ Akhmadaliev would have gotten the Inoue fight already if he would have defeated Tapales. Again, belts absolutely matter. It's also true that he's still probably the sternest test left at 122 for the monster. Both can be true. I hope this fight happens.
Me too.
Back over to Dan. A disgruntled fan pointed out, since you're a boxing journalist, I don't want to embarrass you, but the rotation is WBC, IBF, WBO, then WBA. MJ tried to cut the line to go after Turkey's money at Wembley.
Is that true?
Dan responded by saying, "You're wrong. The WBA ordered the fight twice. WBA is supposed to be next, but even if WBO IBF mandatory Sam Goodman is next, fine, as long as MJ is after that. MJ's team isn't even arguing the Goodman fight at this point, but Picasso after that? No."
Is that the way it is? Did MJ try to skip ahead in the line? Did he try to cut in line?
He absolutely did. Mudajan Akhmadaliev was the last fighter to become Inoue's mandatory. The last.
The first was Luis Neri, who became Inoue's mandatory by beating Afsat Havanesian in February of last year.
The second was Sam Goodman, who became his IBF mandatory challenger by beating Reese Alim in June of last year. And the last was MJ Akhmadaliev, who became his WBA mandatory challenger by beating Kevin Gonzalez in December of last year. All Inoue is doing is following the rotation. Even if the WBA initially jumped the gun and ordered the MJ Akhmadaliev fight before he could get to Sam Goodman, it doesn't matter.
Because MJ wasn't next anyway. MJ has to come after Sam, which is likely why they haven't stripped him.
If what the critics are saying is that Inoue is not adhering to the WBA's order, well, they would have stripped him by now if this were a case of non-compliance.
But it's not. It's a case of MJ throwing his toys out of the pram because he isn't next and he doesn't want to wait, and the WBA jumping the gun.
So think about that. Think about how long MJ Akhmadaliev has been crying and complaining that he wants to fight Inoue, all the while he was last, dead last in the rotation, while Inoue is satisfying mandatory challengers because that's what Luis Neri was.
And that's what Sam Goodman would have been if not for Sam having busted his hand in a fight that he didn't need to be in.
That's why Inoue ended up fighting TJ Doheny in the interim.
Because Sam busted his hand and now Sam cut his eye.
MJ said, when I was a champion, I followed the rules. He should follow the rules as well. I had mandatories and I was fighting them without any discussions. That's what Inoue's been doing. You're just misrepresenting all of this as a way to sell yourself and sell this fight.
The way MJ's been talking, you'd think he passed through some kind of a hardship in the interim. When the man's only fought 2 times since losing his belts to Marlon Tapales, he's only fought 2 times, and the second time was literally yesterday.
Think about the span of time in between the Kevin Gonzalez fight and the Ricardo Espinoza fight. That's a year, folks. There's a year in between those 2 fights. If you didn't see any action earlier this year, that's on you, your manager, and your promoter, because you should have fought and you could have fought. You didn't. You wanted to play it safe. What you wanted to do was squat on that rank and squat on your WBA interim title, playing it safe and biding your time, waiting for the Inoue fight to come around.
You're telling me that Eddie Hearn, who's been doing shows all throughout the calendar year, couldn't get you a fight until December of this one.
What the hell happened the other 11 months of this calendar year? What were you doing? Besides calling for a fight you weren't next for anyway. You're last in the rotation. That didn't change.
Sam is next.
As far as Sam Goodman and what's supposed to be that fight, Inoue's title bout with Sam Goodman has now been moved to January 24. Undisputed Super Bantamweight champion Naoya Inoue's fight against Sam Goodman has been rescheduled for next month on the 24th in Tokyo. Inoue announced on social media late Friday. The fight was originally scheduled for December 24th, this month, but was pushed back after Goodman suffered a serious cut over his left eye. It is set to be streamed on ESPN Plus the morning of January 24th in the US. A major star in Japan, Inoue, 28-0 with 25 KOs, sold out the Tokyo Dome in May when he knocked out Luis Neri with 50,000 plus in attendance. In September, Inoue retained his 422-pound belts with a 7th-round TKO of TJ Doheny. Inoue, ESPN's number 3 pound-for-pound fighter, was a favorite to defeat Goodman, according to ESPN Bet. Inoue is already an all-time great, a 4-division champion who has dominated every weight class he's reigned in. Goodman, 19-0 with 8 KOs, is ESPN's number 4 super bantamweight and has proved his mettle with wins over fellow contenders Reese Alim and Doheny, who we just mentioned. He is coming off a July decision win over Thai fringe contender, guy whose name I can't pronounce.
This doesn't get said enough. After the Luis Neri fight, it was supposed to be Sam Goodman, but Sam decided to fight this Thai fighter in July, busted his hand in the process, and that's what delayed the Inoue fight. So Inoue kept busy with TJ Doheny in the interim.
Now, could that have been MJ Akhmadaliev instead of TJ?
Maybe.
TJ was a guy who was in the right place at the right time. I think he had amassed something like 3 victories in Japan, and he was developing a bit of a following out there. So when things weren't working out with Sam, they went to the nearest guy. And the nearest guy was TJ.
I wouldn't call that a duck, though.
Inoue will be making his 3rd defense of his undisputed championship and will fulfill another mandatory obligation. The 31-year-old will still owe a mandatory defense against Uzbekistan's Muradjan Akhmadaliev.
The silver lining, I'd say, is that now the fight is picking up more steam.
It has more of a profile now. It's more talked about. That If Inoue would have took care of MJ in a jiffy, it'd just be another guy that he beat, another defense of his undisputed crown. But because it's been allowed time to simmer and build, it's more of a conversation, so when they fight, there will be more eyes on it, as it now has a backstory. MJ claims Inoue is avoiding him. I don't agree with that.
I think you're trying to skip ahead in the line.
Hell, I don't think. I know you're trying to skip ahead in the line, because you were never supposed to be next anyway.
Simple as.
Now all this stuff about a potential David Picasso fight. David Picasso of Mexico, who was actually in action yesterday on Jaime Munguia's undercard. That recommendation was never made by Mr. Ohashi. It was never made by Inoue. It was made by Fernando Beltran of Zenfer.
Inoue never said he was going to fight David Picasso next. If he did, I didn't see it. The only guy I saw talking about putting David in there with Inoue was David's promoter.
This is all on the top rank side of things, you understand? Top rank are the ones who want to bring Inoue to America, and they're looking for a suitable dance partner to do that.
They think it's David.
But I never saw Inoue agree to any of this, or his longtime handler, Mr. Ohashi. I never saw either of those guys sign off on an Inoue versus Picasso fight, so anybody hung up on that is being willfully obtuse. I think they are. Earlier this year, we saw that Inoue entered into some kind of an arrangement with His Excellency, Mr. Turki El Sheikh, who by now we all know has been working closely with Eddie Hearn. So I don't see cause for concern or reason to complain. I think we're gonna get the MJ Akhmadaliev fight in either the spring or summer months.
That's what I always thought.
This is all about MJ Akhmadaliev not wanting to wait and Eddie Hearn having a fighter to promote because, in case you're not aware, MJ's been with Eddie Hearn for a while.
I think he's been with Eddie for about 5 or 6 years now. And up until recently, the super bantamweight division wasn't really getting attention. Not until Inoue moved into it.
While Stephen Fulton and MJ Akhmadaliev were both reigning unified champions, reigning parallel to each other, there wasn't much talk about a fight between them, or much effort put into getting those two guys in the ring with each other.
From either side.
From the Matchroom side or the PBC side, there was no news of offers going out from either team to make a fight with the other. So when you've had this fighter for as long as Eddie's had this fighter, and he's hard to sell because he's an Uzbek, there's a language barrier, many Americans don't watch the lighter weights.
And the Brits aren't really interested in an Uzbek that much either.
Eddie's done his best to try and promote this guy for some years, but his best bet now is to attach his name to Inoue's. And he's done that. I'm not saying that MJ doesn't deserve the fight. I'd like to see it. I'm just saying the guy's gotta wait.
Whether he likes it or not, he has to wait, because he was never supposed to be next anyway.
So if the Sam Goodman fight comes and goes in January, Inoue beats him, stays undisputed champion, and he doesn't fight MJ right after that, then he will have criticism to answer too. But as of now,
he's gotta wait. Sam Goodman is next in January. Sam Goodman is mandatory, the same as yours is mandatory. The difference is Sam became mandatory first.
you gotta wait.